Carnival Cruise Line has a problem. They have a problem that they're trying to fix. They're trying to fix the challenges with bad behavior by some of their passengers. One of the more recent fixes they put in place is to house a drug-sniffing dog on the Carnival Venezia and have it roam the halls and randomly search for contraband. And while certainly this approach will be a deterrent to some and probably the demise of some, it begs the question, will this fix Carnival? That's what we're trying to get at. Will this fix Carnival? Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to La Lido Loca. I am your host, Tony, here to talk you through everything going on in cruising. And that's the big question. Will this fix Carnival? My process to get to that answer is twofold. First, let's identify what are the behaviors that need to be fixed. And second, let's see if we can figure out why these behaviors are occurring and then wrap it all together. First, what are the big behaviors that Carnival is trying to address? I would say that the big behaviors that Carnival is trying to address is fighting on cruise ships and weed usage on cruise ships. Let's talk about the fighting first, and let's explore why fighting occurs on Carnival cruise ships. Are there fights on other cruise lines? Yeah, but are they as frequent as what we see on Carnival Cruise Line? I'm confident in saying no. I think there are more fights on Carnival Cruise Line than other cruise lines. Why is that? I think there's a few key reasons. The first key reason is I believe that Carnival is the gateway to cruising for most people. My first cruise was a Carnival cruise, and so that puts you in a situation where you have people on a cruise ship for the very first time. So you have a lot of new cruisers, and if you think about the scenario that the new cruiser faces, sure, they've been on vacation before, they've been to hotels, they've been places, but have they ever been in a scenario where all of a sudden you're going to be around the same 3,000 people in somewhat close proximity for up to a week at a time? It is a little divergent from the normal idea of vacationing, and it is a little different than really anything else that you may have experienced in life. All of a sudden, brand new cruiser, you're smack dab in the middle of a pile of people. I think the second reason that you see fights on Carnival cruise ship is the diversity of the passengers. And I'm not talking about racial diversity here. I know some have wanted to attribute the fighting to one particular race, which I think is crazy, but there is diversity on cruise ships that I think lends to the aggressive behavior. And the diversity that I'm talking about, this diversity of thought, diversity of lifestyle, diversity of philosophy. We live in the most entitled time I've ever seen in my 50 years of existence because we can go on the internet and we can all get in pockets of our own little tribe, of our own group of people that think the same way. I feel like we become less tolerant of each other. And I think that is true across all philosophies, whether it wants to be political or social or lifestyle. I think that everybody gets tucked in their own little group and they're gonna hold on to their entitlement for their group. And because of that, I think you've seen some added aggressiveness on cruise ships. I think that plays out significantly on Carnival because, again, as a gateway to cruising, as a company that reaches across broad philosophical ideas, socioeconomic groups, you end up with a great diversity of people on this cruise ship. Anybody who's been on Carnival, I think you know exactly what I mean. You're going to run into a lot of diverse people, and it's not really diversity based around race. It's diversity around ideas and where you come from, all kinds of stuff like that. And then the third major factor that contributes to aggressiveness, I think, is alcohol. There certainly is a party and drinking culture on Carnival. There's a drink package. There's countless examples of people sneaking alcohol on board. And I think it's pretty well accepted that there are certain individuals that when they get drunk, they get aggressive. It's not every individual, but when you're on a cruise ship with thousands of individuals, the percentage of individuals that get aggressive when they get drunk, now all of a sudden that's compounded and you're gonna end up with individuals that are ready to fight because they are being fueled by the alcohol. Now you may have noticed something interesting at this point. I don't feel that one of the contributing factors to fighting on Carnival cruise ships is weed. I can't think of an example of a fight that I've witnessed or I've heard somebody talk about that said the stoner all of a sudden got in a fight with somebody. So it makes me question, what is the weed problem when it comes to Carnival Cruise Line, when it comes to cruising in general? The first big problem is it's illegal. It has been legalized by certain states, but it still remains federally illegal, and Carnival is following those federal rules. Therefore, it is not legal on Carnival cruise ships. That's the nuts and bolts of it. There's no leg to stand on if you are somebody who uses. But why is Carnival cracking down so hard on weed if it's not a contributor to the fighting? I think it's simple. The weed stinks. It smells bad. If you're not somebody who partakes, it's not a pleasant smell. And then somebody who does, maybe you get nose blind to it and you don't recognize how bad it smells. Honestly, if it was odorless, I don't think people would care. I think the reason that you have people complaining about weed on board is because of the smell. It's certainly not because it is a contributor to fights on cruise ships. So by establishing that the two major challenges that Carnival is combating aren't related, how do they fix their problems? I guess the weed dog fixes the weed problem. And honestly, if I was a fellow passenger, I'm a little more concerned about the fighting than the smell of weed. The fighting could impact me much more significantly than the annoyance of the smell. Imagine you're sitting in the atrium minding your own business, trying to do a Sudoku or trying to study last week's trivia so that you could win the next match. And all of a sudden a fracas breaks out around you over a game of, a big Jenga, and all of a sudden you get hit in the head with a big Jenga piece, and then a fist comes your way, and you're just trying to sit there and do your Sudoku. And then imagine how that compounds if you have kids with you, or your significant other, or your grandma. All of a sudden your grandma's getting pummeled with a Jenga piece. This is a problem. This is a problem. The fighting has to be addressed. And so it's interesting to me to see all the efforts that Carnival is going through to curb the illegal substance that we don't feel like is contributing to the fighting. But I don't see a lot of language or conversation around what's being done to address the legal substance that is contributing to the fighting. And I'm talking about alcohol. Is it possible to regulate people's drunkenness on a cruise ship? I've talked about it before. There's a danger zone. And look, I'm not talking about the hit song from Top Gun, Danger Zone, recorded and written by Ludacris back in 1986. I'm talking about the alcohol danger zone. Shout out Luda. You want to get that happy buzz. You want to feel good with your alcohol, but you can transcend that buzz and go into the danger zone. And I feel like the danger zone is where people black out and could be victimized. It's the danger zone where people get overly aggressive. What is Carnival and other cruise lines doing to keep people out of the danger zone? You may say, well, if they're on the drink package, it's 15 drinks. But honestly, I think people could be in the danger zone before the 15 drinks. And what about the people that are sneaking alcohol on board? How do you know when they are in the danger zone? When I worked in a restaurant back in the day, I had to go to a specific class to understand different levels of inebriation so I could determine whether or not to serve the next drink. And to be fair, I do think that that is happening. I do have some personal experience with people that were locked in their cabin because they were too drunk the day before, but they were really drunk. People that have been cut off from drinking were really drunk. They were way into the danger zone. And I think that's where the challenge is. You've got to catch people before they're way too far gone. We could lay it on personal responsibility, but when you take a, physiologically altering substance like alcohol and you still want people to make the best judgment calls, it's not reasonable. And so somebody who's serving the alcohol, I feel like, needs to step in and not just for the sake of the person, but for the sake of everybody else, whether it's just a general safety issue or an aggressive issue. And I'm just curious as to how extensively that is being done. If you really want to change the behavior of a person who is way too drunk, you're going to have to make sure they don't get way too drunk. I think that's the real problem you're going to have to solve. There's no way you're going to, ban alcohol from cruise ships. That's not the way it works. We all love our vices: gambling, smoking, drinking. Those are always going to be a part of most aspects of cruising. You're not going to get rid of the drinks. So there's got to be a way to keep people from getting so drunk that they get to that aggressive state. Some people will be aggressive either way, but I think a lot of these incidents are, heightened by alcohol. There's been some great content around this over the last couple of days. Jay from the Ship Life has talked about the drug sniffing dog aspect of it, and then Tommy and Ryan over at the Always Be Booked Cruise podcast, they had a really interesting conversation about why Carnival is stepping up these efforts on the Venezia, but maybe not some of the older Carnival ships. which is a whole interesting conversation. Make sure you check all those folks out. And let me say this so I'm not misunderstood. I've never seen a fight on a cruise ship. I'm coming up on 50 cruises now on 10 different cruise lines, many cruises on Carnival. I have never seen a fight on a cruise ship. I've only seen the examples on social media, things that other people have brought up. I have seen aggressive people on cruise ships, and so I do think there is an underlying aggressiveness that needs to be tackled. Carnival Cruise Line plays such an important role in the cruise life. Again, I think it brings people in. There's a lot of great loyal Carnival cruisers. There's a lot of great content creators that make Carnival cruise content. So hopefully you don't see this as a bashing video. The goal is to spark a conversation, and maybe together as a community we can come up with something that maybe some leadership over there can glean out of the comments, something like that. That may be a lofty idea for our community, but I think it's a valid idea. I'll leave you with 2 questions. Number 1, what was your first cruise line? Number 2, how does Carnival fix its fighting problem? Thanks for checking out the show today. Make sure you subscribe for more. Hit that like button on your way out. This is Tony for La Lido Loca. Until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.